Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner sitting in for Steve. Thank you so much for joining us, and again, a very happy Passover to all of our friends. I was wandering across the wires, and occasionally you'll find one of those headlines which will just strike you immediately, and you must stop. And I found this one, and it immediately made me think of Warren Zevon. Now, for those of you, of course, who are too young or not old enough, whatever, to remember Warren Zevon, great rock and roller, had songs like Werewolves of London and Excitable Boy. But I had another one that came to mind right away, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. And this has nothing to do with lawyers. This is a headline that says, U.S. Postal Service joins in federal ammo purchase. You saw it on Newsmax.com. That's right. The United States Postal Service is out buying up bullets. I'll bet you didn't know they needed bullets. And no jokes from here on out. Let us welcome in now our guest to discuss this. He is an economist. He is also best-selling author of the book More Guns, Less Crime. John Lott Jr. joins us today via Skype. John, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
John, I don't know if you had the same thing that I did when I first saw this, but I would bet that most of Americans don't even think for a second that certain administrations, certain groups in the government are buying bullets, much less putting bullets in the hand of the U.S. Postal Service. How did this strike you when you first heard about it?
Well, federal government's pretty big, and lots of agencies have their own law enforcement arm. There are crimes that occur with regard to the post office, and they have enforcement efforts with regard to that. And so they buy bullets for some people in law enforcement in the post office as much as they do for the FBI or Homeland Security.
Now, I think that this is something, though, that most people would not think about. And let's get down to this and dig into it a little bit, because we know that Homeland Security and there are certain law enforcement agencies who will have guns and bullets. I think you could find, if you ask 10 people, I don't think 8 of them would know that the U.S. Postal Service has a law enforcement side, but they're not the only one, are they?
No, I mean, Department of Agriculture, Department of Housing and Urban Development, you can go down the list. Pretty much almost all of them have some type of law enforcement arm connected with the agency.
How much actual law enforcement do they do? And I guess that's what a lot of people would ask, because we think of law enforcement immediately as policemen, police officers who are out there with specific crimes. But what would an agency like the U.S. Postal Service be using the weapons for, and what would their law enforcement agencies be doing with these weapons to basically stop crime?
Well, there's fraud that can occur through the postal system. There's other types of crimes. People can use the Postal Service to ship things that they're not supposed to use it for. There's a range of different types of activities. If there's a federal crime that involves using the post office, then it's at least possible that their law enforcement activity could be involved.
When you look at, and again, the book that you had, and I've not read the entire book, but I have read portions of it, indeed, More Guns, Less Crime. Is this part of really what needs to happen? Because I will tell you right now that there will be people who will say, well, you have law enforcement, you have police agencies, you have FBI, you have DEA, you have CIA. You don't need these kind of law enforcement agencies at these other levels of government, to which you would respond.
It's hard to justify all the different overlapping federal agencies. I mean, it's just not with regard to law enforcement. You have, I don't know how many different agencies provide welfare type benefits for people, or go and monitor health and safety type issues. There's a huge amount of overlap. I'm sure that just in terms of administrative savings, we could go and reduce the size of the federal government in many different ways. I would guess that the agencies make the argument that they don't want to have to go through the FBI or some other organization to help when they think that a crime's occurring and they need somebody to go and act quickly. That's my guess. That's my guess. The main argument that they would make in favor of the way things are set up now.
I want to talk a little bit and shift to a little bit more about your book and a little bit about the issue More Guns, Less Crime, which is what a lot of people talk about, and a lot of people agree with that sentiment. We now go out to the recent instance that happened where there was a shooting at a synagogue, and certainly at Jewish centers in Kansas, I believe. And there are people saying, and I saw this immediately, you see this on social media quite a lot when something like this happens. They go, up, here we go, more guns in the hands of people. But when you hear something like that, how do you react when people are always taking instances like this and saying that's the real problem? We don't need more guns.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, guns make it easier for bad things to happen, but they also make it easier for people to protect themselves and prevent bad things from happening. And if you look around the world, every place that's tried to ban guns has seen an increase in murder rates and violent crimes. It's not just in Chicago or Washington, D.C., where we tried those bans that you saw dramatic increases in murder rates. Even island nations that you think would be kind of the ideal experiment, well-defined, easily defendable borders, no neighbor to go and blame on for providing weapons. Yet you still see very dramatic, 6-7-fold increases in murder rates in some of those cases after bans been put in there. And the reason is pretty simple, and that is who obeys these laws? When you pass a law and it's primarily good law-abiding citizens who are disarmed relative to criminals, you actually make it easier for criminals to go and commit crimes. And, if you look at multiple victim public shootings, attacks in which 4 or more people have been killed since 1950, with just 2 exceptions, every single one of those attacks have taken place where guns are banned. We've finally had a little bit of a discussion about these with regard to the 2 Fort Hood shootings or the Navy Yard shooting. There you have a situation where even soldiers are banned from being able to go and carry weapons with them when they're on bases other than military police. And my research shows that police are extremely important in stopping crime, probably the single most important factor. But I think if you go and you talk to the police, they understand themselves that they virtually always arrive on the crime scene after the crime's been committed. And that's true whether you're talking about civilian police or you're talking about military police. Place like Fort Hood, military police have a huge base to cover. They're present at the entrances, but they drive around in their squad cars on the base just as regular police, civilian police would drive around in their cars inside cities. And so when minutes matter or seconds matter, even 6 or 8 minute lags for police to respond, which is extremely good response time, can be much too long of a situation. And in Kansas, I'll just mention there's a temple at the community center where the attack occurred, and of course, temples and churches in Kansas are some places where guns are banned. But when you have somebody going and planning these types of attacks very frequently, many months or even years in advance, it's very difficult to stop a criminal from going and obtaining a gun.
Just 20, 30 seconds that we have left right here. John, let me ask you, would you feel more safe personally if there were in a lot of states guns in churches, guns in stores, people carrying guns just openly wherever they went and about their daily business?
I think that should be up to the property owners that are there. But
would you feel safer though, personally?
Yeah, I would feel safer knowing that potential attackers realize that there's some risk that somebody's going to be able to go and stop them. I think that deters people from engaging these attacks, and if something were to occur, it's by far the safest course of action for people to take. People can get a lot more information on this by going to our website, the Crime Prevention Research Center.org. Just the name of our organization, Crime Prevention Research Center.org. But
wonderful. I'm glad you told us that.
But
I'm glad you told us that. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I just want to make sure that I promote the book again. The book is called More Guns, Less Crime. John, I want to thank you for taking a couple of minutes to join us here with your opinions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So again, the U.S. Postal Service's ammo purchase. Social Security has their own purchase for ammunition. They say it keeps you safe. This is the Steve Malzberg Show. I'm Ed Berliner. We're back on Newsmax TV.
We don't just talk about the news. We talk to those making news. This is the Steve Malzberg Show.